On the line today, famous football songwriter and singer, Mike Brady. Welcome to Licorice All Sports. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Great to be here, Rob, and I've been looking forward to having a chat with you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Mike. Now, Mike, you've been travelling around the country and, overseas for more than 50 years now, performing various songs, but predominantly footy songs. Your footy songs have been almost made famous through the AFL Final series. You wrote the song back in 1979, that being Up There Kazali with the two-man band. 41 years on, what does that song mean to you? And more specifically, what does that song mean to you at this particular time of the year upcoming with AFL Finals?
Yeah, well, it's always a bigger concentration on it in September than there is in the rest of the year, but it means a lot to me that it's lasted so long. I think everybody, always wants to write a song that lasts and hangs around for a long time. And I didn't write it with a particular style. If I had have done in 1979, it would have been a disco song, and it certainly wouldn't be around now. But I really do genuinely enjoy singing it because it makes a lot of people happy. I'm sure not everybody loves it, but it's a great feeling when you run out at the G or the Grand Final parade or the Northern League Grand Final.
Yep.
To actually get up and which is where we met. Get up and sing a song that most of the audience love. It's a lovely thing to, I suppose, own. Do I own it? I suppose I do, yeah. It's a nice thing to have your belt and your harness attached to.
And Mike, we're in some pretty trying times here in Victoria. A lot of uncertainty with the lockdowns that have been happening for the state of Victoria through Daniel Andrews. What are the prospects of you actually performing at this year's AFL Grand Final with obviously all the restrictions that you're going to have to get up there, do the quarantine? Have you been approached by the AFL at all?
Well, not directly. I've had a conversation with a couple of people that are involved in the entertainment just to sort of sound out what thoughts I had. And I reckon they've got a lot on their plate, Rob, and I reckon they've got a few thousand people trying to get on the entertainment list. And I figured that it's probably better to leave them to sort it all out themselves. And if I get on the list, fantastic. It would be great. I'd love to do it this year because I think it will mean a lot to a lot of people. It'll lift everybody's spirits, I reckon, if we do it properly. But logistically, it's difficult, to get up there and quarantine for 2 weeks and all that sort of stuff. It's possible that it could be beamed in and streamed in live by satellite. But I don't know. I mean, I read that the band that they'd spoken to have knocked it back. Was that again? Can't think of their name now. But Bernard Fanning's band.
Yep.
And I wouldn't knock it back. I'd be very proud and, privileged as I always am to do it. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've spoken to a couple of people who are involved in it, and the AFL. I haven't spoken to the AFL directly. No.
Yeah, interesting times, Mike, as you say, with just everything that's going on and the uncertainty of the times ahead. Now, look, we'll go back a little bit, Mike. Back in 1981, you released an album called Mike Brady Presents the Songs of Football's Greatest Sons. We're nearly 40 years ago now, Mike, and there's a lot of catchy tunes, a lot of footy songs that people, from yesteryear and even the children today would be aware of. Yeah. You sang along last year. I was actually at the 2019 Grand Final and I saw you live, so I was privileged. And also at the Northern Netball Football League Grand Final. What are some of those songs that really inspire you, and what are some of your favourite songs from that album?
Well, it was a great project to do. I did it with a mate of mine. I wrote them with him, called Noel Delbridge, and he had a lot of information. But I think some of the songs are really good fun. I love the one with Barassi because he and I are mates. and the line was not the most gifted, not the most skilled, not the most something other, but the most iron-willed. Barras, you're the captain of our great Aussie game. And he said, I was gifted, I was skilled. But I love that one. I love the one about Captain Blood. I mean, a lot of them are gone now that I wrote about.
Yes.
Louis the Lip. And it was just great fun writing it and recording it. Also, musically, I did it with a number of musicians, but mostly with Peter Sullivan again, who did all my commercials and films and television and stuff that I wrote in those days. But that's still selling, that record. On my website, it's really funny. I just got a call coincidentally before from my office saying that they had 5 orders of it today. Now that's a 40-year-old record. Yeah. And it's a CD. We haven't even got it on the vinyl anymore. And we've got to order some more. We've just about sold out.
Interesting. It's amazing. Some of those technologies that you just mentioned, like CDs and vinyl, they're kind of making a comeback. I sort of live in the northern suburbs, and there's a real market for all those types of things. So it's interesting that you say that, and as you say, 5, you can never knock back a sale. 5 sales in 40 years on, but you probably wouldn't have imagined that years ago. But obviously, we're in lockdown at the moment. It's been a tough period for all Victorians, and I've been checking out your Instagram, Mike, and I noticed you've wrote a song called Lockdown Blues. So tell the listeners a little bit about that. So I really did enjoy that listen.
Well, that was when the first lockdown came in.
Okay.
And no one had done one. No, there might have been a couple, but I was out at a mate's place because we were allowed to do that because I live in the country, and we're sitting on the balcony socially isolating. Excuse me, that's a cockatoo yelling out, if you heard that noise then. All the parrots come around for a feed this time of night. I sat down with a pen and I wrote this, and I started playing it for a muck around, and he said, I'm going to film it, and we put it up. But it was just a bit of fun, to make people laugh. I think there's been about 10,000 lockdown type songs have gone up, and some of them are very, very good. But, sometimes I think a bit of humour and a bit of a laugh is important at a time like this. It's not really a laughing matter, no. But we mustn't lose our sense of humour. In fact, it's been unbelievably tragic for a lot of families. I'm actually writing something at the moment which is acknowledging the hardship and the sorrow that a lot of families have been through in this terrible time. But touch wood, I've always been a loner, so I live in isolation all the time anyway. Yep. I talk to myself. I walk up and say, "Good morning, mate. What would you like for breakfast?"
Well, I can kind of relate. I'm happy. I can relate a little bit. Like I'm currently living by myself, and I do talk to myself on the odd occasion. So you're not the only one. Don't worry. So.
Well, once you get as old as me, and you'll start telling yourself off. I call myself a silly old fool.
All right. Age is just a number, Mike. Age is just a number, and you're still performing at the highest level in the industry. So there's nothing to worry about there. Mike, back in the 1960s, you played in a band called MPD, which stood for Mike, Pete, and Danny. I've just done my research there. So tell us a little bit more about those first experiences, because you were born in England and you came across as a young man here to Australia. So tell the listeners a little bit about your early days as a musician.
Oh, well, I started on a migrant hostel. We came to Australia in 1959. God, that's a long time ago. And I learnt guitar on the migrant hostel. And I managed, we eventually got a housing commission flat, which was like moving into Buckingham Palace, I always say. And it was, then I was playing guitar a bit, and I used to go to Festival Hall on Sunday, which is still standing, I guess, for the time being. And there was a band that used to play there that ended up touring with the Beatles. They were called the Phantoms. Okay. And they'd just come back from touring with the Beatles. I think I was 15 at the time. Yes, I was 15 at the time when I saw them at the Festival Hall, and I loved them, and I loved all their songs they played, and their guitarist broke his arm. So I joined this band, the Phantoms, and went touring with them when I was 15. and out of the Phantoms, the bass player and I left, and we poached the drummer from another band that used to play there called the Saxons. Some of your listeners may remember it. And we formed MPD Limited. So, and we had, unfortunately, a lot of the rock histories are written out of Sydney. And we had #1 records, and they were #1 in Sydney. They were national hits. But we, a lot of it is left off. Like I get books on the history of Australian rock, and unless they're written in Melbourne, they sometimes forget MPD. But we shared equal billing with Normie Rowe, the Easy Beats, and Bobby and Laurie, and we toured together for a couple of years. Went to England to make our fortune, but I missed home too much. Yep. And we came back after a year, and I didn't go back to England. I'd met a girl on the beach at Lorne, and years later, I ended up marrying her. So it was quite funny. I mean, it was a wonderful time. I mean, there was no money in it. Everybody was robbing everybody. Rock and roll was an honorary. I mean, all the bands from those days, none of them made any money. Certainly in Australia, but it's probably the same all over the world. All the managers and all the agents and all that stuff. But it was great fun. I used to say I didn't get into music for music. I got into music for the girls.
Okay. I suppose it's a handy skill. The old, strumming guitar back in the '60s with what I would have imagined just by going by what my dad's told me, a bit of the hippie era, sort of Woodstock was around that era too. So interesting times, Mike. Yeah. Now, you just rolled off. I was going to ask you this. You just rolled off a few famous Australian bands. Probably who's the most famous band that you actually personally have worked with over the years throughout all your experiences as a musician?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, well, sharing the stage with, I suppose, is as a solo act, I've worked with probably, some of the biggest names on the same shows, like the Angels, and not in the band, but I've sung. In fact, I actually sung with Sherbet on their very last show together on Great Keppel Island. Daryl Braithwaite got me up out of the audience. I was there on my yacht I had at the time. Okay. Got me up, and I sang the last couple of songs, and then they had to finish because there was a noise curfew, so he didn't get to sing the last song in the band. And we've always laughed about it because it's like a trivia question: who was singing in Sherbet's last show? And it was on Great Keppel Island. I think they might have had a reunion after that. But no, a lot of people over the years, internationals, and Australian acts. It's been a great journey, but of course I became an agent, so I've worked on stage with Thorpe, the great Thorpe. I've worked with Renee Gayer. I've sung on a lot of people's records over the years, from John Farnham. In fact, I wrote a song that John recorded, produced a number of people from. I was executive producer of Tina Arena's comeback album, which was. Really transition album, really, which is called Strong as Steel, which was after her Young Talent Time days. And Colleen Hewitt produced her first album. So I worked with a lot of Australian acts, but also shared the stage with a lot of internationals in various concerts. So it's been a good, fun career. It might not have had a lot of money attached to it. I just spoke about my boat, which was a beautiful boat, but I was doing other things then. I was writing jingles in those days. I wasn't writing or songs or really singing with bands. I was just enjoying, a lifestyle that was brought to me by a fairly high income in those days.
You mentioned jingles. Are you responsible for any of the famous Australian ads that we've seen over the years? Any of those famous TV commercials? Are you behind any of the great work?
Oh, well, there's a lot on that I wrote, from Hard Yakka to Lucky You're with Amy, that's still on. There's really thousands of them. I did that many I forget. Okay. But for Arnott's, I did lots of their jingles, for Sale, can't beat a sale. And lots of different goods, cars. Just about every car on the market in those days: Ford, Holden, Toyota, Nissan. I just did lots and lots of work. I'd do sometimes 12, 13 jingles a week, and it was a relatively lucrative, but it was hard work. It was really hard work in a studio every day, but I learnt a lot of things. But I never really let go of my songwriting career, because I used to write little ditties and songs here and there during it. But there was more money. There was a living in doing jingles. There wasn't really much of a living in bands.
Well, Mike, it's been a fantastic conversation today, and I appreciate your time. But what the listeners really want to hear is a bit of Up There Kazali. We are in September, maybe one day in September. How about we get into it?
All right, I've got to get my guitar. I just happen to have a guitar lying close by.
What a surprise that is.
There's always well, we put a lot in, we've worked real hard. There are days when we tried, days when we started trying to please the crowd, and they're unforgiving. There are easier ways to make a living. We've come a long way since the start of things. We've seen the joy that hard work brings, made us cry, made us smile. We've hit the front, now it's all worthwhile. Cause there's one day in September we want to remember. There isn't any doubting, we'll be in there shouting. Football's such a part of this whole town, and we know that you won't let us down. And of course, there's my superannuation. I can't get away without playing that. Well, you work to earn a living. Do you want the Bob Dylan version or the Mike Brady version?
Let's. All right, you go. Your freestyle. You're the freestyle.
Well, you work to earn a living. But on weekends comes the time you can do whatever turns you on. Go out and clear your mind. Me, I like football. There's a lot of things around. When you line them up together, the footy wins hands down. Oh, I've played for a while. I'm there 'cause I live in there and fight. Out there and at 'em, show 'em you might. Out there 'cause I live, show 'em you hide. Fight like the devil, the crowd's on your side. The crowd's on your side.
Fantastic. Listeners, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Brady with One Day in September and Up There Kazali. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, Mike. It's really brightened up my day, and I know it's going to brighten up my listeners' day. And at the start of the conversation, it was you mentioned Bernard Fanning's. It's Powderfinger. Powderfinger, yeah. Powderfinger declined to play at the Gabba. They are an Australian band, obviously, but originally from Brisbane. So I guess it's a little bit sad not to see them play, because I was at their last Melbourne concert in 2010. So that's a whole decade ago now, and they implement what Australian music's been about for the past 25 years. So
I think it's all power to Bernard Fanning. I think his songs and his songwriting has been extraordinary. I don't think as a band they were the most spectacular of live bands I've ever seen, but they were certainly driven by the great songs of Bernard Fanning. So he's out solo these days, but he must be doing all right if he can knock back fees like rumoured they were offered to. I would have taken it.
No doubt, Mike. Well, yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining Licorice All Sports on Plenty Valley 88.6 FM. It's been a pleasure, and I know that the listeners are going to absolutely love hearing you sing the renditions of those songs, because it does. If you have a passion for football like I do, Mike, I've been involved in the game at the local level for the best part of 25 plus years, about 27, 28 years, and I guarantee you, the listeners out there, they truly do have appreciation for what you do, especially at this time of year. That your professionalism really shines during the finals series, as we're what would usually be the final series, but it's an indifferent year. But we're only 2 or 3 weeks away from finals footy. So once again, thank you so much.
Good on you, Rob. Thank you very much, mate. Lovely to speak to you and to your audience as well. Thanks, mate.